If you ever hear a man scream in this forest, run, don't help. They're not men anymore. That's what my father told me, standing on our porch, the last rays of sunset catching the deep furrows in his brow. We lived in a village huddled at the edge of the Dunkelwald, the dark forest. It was a place of folklore, of shadows that moved when you weren't looking. The elders warned us kids about it, spun tales over crackling fires, but my father's rule was different. It wasn't a story, it was an order. He'd been military, saw things he never spoke of, and his words carried the weight of grim experience. That rule was etched into my mind long before I understood what it truly meant. I left the village for a decade, chased a life in the city where the only dangers were traffic and deadlines. But the forest, it calls you back. When I returned, older and maybe a little foolish, I felt a duty to protect the home I'd once fled. So, I volunteered for the local search and rescue team. I thought it would be sprained ankles and lost hikers. I was wrong. That's where I met the rangers. They weren't park wardens. They were something else entirely. There was Thomas, the leader, a man whose ice blue eyes seemed to look right through you, assessing every weakness. And Gunther, built like a mountain, silent and observant, his gaze constantly sweeping the tree line as if expecting an ambush. They moved with the quiet, efficient discipline of a special forces unit. They were armed, not just with standard rescue gear, but with heavy caliber rifles they kept slung low and ready. They weren't looking for lost people. They were hunting. My first call-out with them came on a cold autumn evening. A young couple, tourists named Lisa and Philip, had vanished. Their car was found parked at a trailhead, a half-eaten bag of chips on the dashboard. It was a common enough scenario, but the way Thomas and Gunther geared up told me this was different. The air was still, heavy with the coming frost. As we stepped past the first line of ancient oaks, the modern world fell away. The forest swallowed the light. We moved deeper than I'd ever gone as a boy, into a part of the Dunkelwald that felt primal, suffocated by a canopy so thick it turned midday into twilight. The air grew cold, carrying a scent that made the back of my throat tighten. It was metallic, the coppery tang of blood, layered with something else, a deep, wet rot like a freshly opened grave. My stomach churned. The forest wasn't just quiet, it was holding its breath. Every snap of a twig under my boot sounded like a gunshot. Suddenly, Thomas held up a clenched fist, the universal signal for a hard stop. He dropped to a crouch, and we all followed, melting into the moss and ferns. His voice was a barely audible whisper, slicing through the tension. Down! No lights! My hand froze on its way to my headlamp. Why no lights? We were in near total darkness. My eyes strained to adjust, seeing only shades of black and deeper black. The silence that followed was absolute, a crushing weight that pressed in on all sides. My own heartbeat thudded in my ears, a frantic drum against the stillness. Then the scent hit again, stronger this time. Overpowering, a thick, gamey stench of wet fur and decay, so close I could almost taste it. We were no longer alone. Something was circling us, just beyond the edge of sight. I could feel its presence, a primal dread that bypassed reason and went straight for the spine. And then came the sound. It started low, a vibration I felt in my chest before I heard it. A guttural growl that escalated into a howl unlike anything I had ever imagined. It wasn't just a wolf. It was layered, twisted. The desperate, agonized scream of a man being torn apart, woven into the raw, predatory cry of a beast. The sound vibrated through the very ground, shaking the leaves on the trees, rattling my teeth in my skull. It was a symphony of pure terror. Panic seized me. My training screamed at me to run, to get away from that impossible noise. But I was frozen, pinned to the forest floor by sheer horror. I could hear heavy, dragging footsteps nearby, the wet sloshing of something massive moving through the damp undergrowth. The air was thick with that foul, suffocating stink. A flash of movement in the periphery, a glint of moonlight on something pale. Then the sharp, deafening crack of Thomas's rifle shattered the night, once, twice. The muzzle flash illuminated a nightmare. For less than a second I saw it, a silhouette, huge and malformed, hunched on all fours, its shape all wrong for any known animal. It was impossibly broad, its limbs too long, its back hunched in a way that defied anatomy. And its eyes? They weren't eyes. They were two burning coals, glowing with a malevolent, hungry red light, fixed right on us. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The ringing in my ears slowly faded, replaced by a silence even more terrifying than the howl. The forest was utterly still again. Not even the wind dared to move. We lay there, breaths held, guns raised into the oppressive dark. We didn't speak. We didn't move. We just waited. We waited for the sun, praying for the dawn to break through the impenetrable canopy above. We waited until dawn. We thought it left. We were wrong.